What's up? This is Aaron Levine, LG Insurance Agency, on the Who You Work With Matters podcast with one of my who's, Dan Myron from Extensis HR. Whatever Extensis is, we're going to find out in just a couple of minutes. But Dan, you've educated me quite a bit over the last couple of months, and I appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to being able to share some of your knowledge and a little bit about your company and the services that you provide for brokers like myself and ultimately the end users, which are business owners, on reorganizing and simplifying and enhancing employee benefits and everything that goes into it. So again, Dan, thanks so much for connecting and joining me today.
Awesome, Aaron. Looking forward to it. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. So tell me a little bit about, you're with Extensis AR. So tell me about Extensis. What is Extensis? And then we'll talk about the products that you provide and the support you bring into the agency channel.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. Extensis is a PEO. What that stands for is Professional Employer Organization. You could think of a PEO as not only an outsourced HR provider, but also an administrator of Fortune 500 level benefits. So think of maybe your average smaller size organization being able to offer a Fortune 5 or 100 suite of benefits they may not be able to get on their own on the open market. By partnering with a PEO. And of course, a lot more goes into that, but think of it as leveling the playing field with small, mid-sized businesses versus the big players out there.
So offering those type of benefits seems like an administrative nightmare as a business owner myself. But, the way you're positioning it, it sounds like it's, a hiring benefit to an employer to be able to, to attract certain talent as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You see a lot of these employers and they're looking for talent, whether it's in the workforce, folks fresh out of school. They're competing against a lot of those publicly traded organizations. Again, those larger groups that have the economies of scale to not only administer the benefits, but to be able to go out and source a competitive medical plan and robust dental and vision and really bring in the whole large group employer feel to maybe that small mom and pop organization who otherwise wouldn't be able to administer the benefits, but also might not be able to source them without maybe a PEO's economies of scale. So it's leveling the playing field almost for the small businesses out there.
So how did you get into this business? How long have you been with Extensis? Where did you come from? What's attracted you to working in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's been 10 years now, and I had more hair on my head and a little less on my face. And I was actually an HR manager for a business in Monmouth County. We were a wholesale distributor. So if you ever seen the show The Office, I was doing HR for the office, but also the warehouse too, right? So I was almost an administrator, and we used an outsourced HR provider. I'm not going to say the name. So interestingly enough, my first foray almost into HR outsourcing, I was actually an end user, and I saw what a nightmare it was, to your point, matching up benefit deductions to payroll reports. And then around that time, Extensis HR contacted me, and ever since then, I've sat in a lot of different seats over the last 10 years and really had the chance to serve our organization, our clients, and our broker partners in a lot of different capacities.
So when you say outsourced HR, right, I think about workplace safety and compliance. Forget about the administrative tasks involved with that, right? Are there workplace safety and compliance related tools that you bring to the table to help employers out?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually bring tools and we bring people too as well. A lot of the PEO industry are, and they're moving more towards that SaaS model. We all know about AI, right? Replacing a lot of the people touch.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, you can't have PEO or HR without people. So we do bring resources, best practices, but we also bring people to really help implement and fine tune those best practices as far as workplace safety goes, multi-state compliance as well, especially in this distributed post-COVID environment we live in, where employers are hiring across all different state lines and brings a lot of layers of complexity to it as well.
So we just brought on a client recently that actually has a team member in Canada, um, and then I think 9 different states across the US because they're a fully
Yep.
remote type organization. The business is based in New Jersey, so we wrote it as a New Jersey based company, but the CEO lives in Minnesota. There's employees in California. I mean, administrative nightmare when it comes to that kind of thing. It seems like that's going to be a perfect connection for us to make, because even on the workers' comp side, as much as I love workers' comp and I love to keep workers' comp in the office, so a business like this is not going to benefit when I try to keep the workers' comp in-house, right? I'd like to keep workers' comp in-house. It's definitely somewhere where we're very strong in our office with respect to audits and making sure that we're in compliance and we help handle claims. But when you're operating out of 9 different states and
Mhm.
across border,
Yep.
it gets even more challenging, so bringing in a professional like yourself, with a team that's comfortable and does that often seems to be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I look at it really a two-pronged approach. First, groups like that, they're going to want national benefits access, right? So you have a couple of folks in California, you got folks in Minnesota, New Jersey. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You're going to want a benefit package that includes national access. And then you mentioned it, Aaron. It's the complexity, it's the legislation. You hire someone in California, you're automatically adding an addendum to that employee handbook, right? So it's the access to the national benefits that looks and feels like a large employer benefit offering. And then also, to your point, it's the multi-state complexity, the HR legislation. We're seeing a lot of that over the last 4 or 5 years and trending just more towards in the multi-state environment.
Can you go cross border? Is Extensis set up to go cross border? How does that work in Canada?
So Extensis, we could do payroll for cross-border
Okay.
Extensis HR, and there are different nuances. I don't want to get it into here. PEO versus EOR. So there's a lot of different acronyms, and really, once you get into crossing national borders into different states, there are PEOs that can do it. We can also look into things like EORs.
Okay.
Also, that Canadian employee might not need to be in PEO. You could maybe administer the payroll for that employee. Of course, benefits are a lot different in California and put the United States folks on the U.S. platform with the national benefit access. So especially when there's different countries involved, may not be a one-size solution, but there's definitely an option, absolutely, for international payroll and international compliance too.
Much better than trying to figure it out on my own, or to the employer for her to figure it out on her own,
Absolutely.
for sure. So when we talk about these national benefits, right? You started this conversation talking about Fortune 500 style benefits. What does that mean, right? What's included in that? What's available? How does it price? Like, go deeper into the actual benefits available through PEO.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of small organizations, when I say small, I typically mean under 50. Their benefits are broken. Typically, they're in a state model. They're typically overpaying depending on the health of the group, and they're subsidizing thousands of other employers or organizations in that state, right? What a PEO does, it allows groups to be individually underwritten and priced at their own merit. So if you have a group that's really, they're young and healthy, they're not high utilizers of benefits, they could be maybe in a state program and paying 30, 40, sometimes 50% higher premiums. What the PEO and our economies of scale allows our clients to do is to really not only leverage our large group pricing, but also give them a suite of plan designs they may
Hmm.
not be able to get on the open market. For example, I have a broker colleague that does medical primarily, and she always says, I can put my clients with Extensis and give them a dental plan with $5,000 annual benefit and orthodontic coverage. That stuff is hard to find for your average 10,
Sure.
15 person company on the open market. And it's also putting it into the 21st century, putting it on our electronic platform, giving it that look and feel that a bigger organization would typically have. And then, of course, the administration of that as well, right? So managing the COBRA, the leave of absence, really all the stuff that our clients typically do or their broker partners. Let the PEO focus on that, and you focus on running and growing your business.
I love that. So the technology, let's go, right? The technology is huge when it comes to a benefits platform. So talk about the technology that you provide to business owners.
Absolutely. So it's a one-stop shop. It's on our HR Cloud Work Anywhere platform. Different PEOs, they have different HRIS platforms as well. But the beauty of it, Aaron, is the payroll, the benefits, everything is right there for the administrators, your office managers, your CFOs. I'll bring you back 10 years ago to my company, and this is really true for clients we work with now. We used Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. I would have a Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield user ID and password, right? Then I would have our payroll platform, right? And I would be matching up these different censuses. But what the PEO allows you to do is really give it that mature look and feel, put it into one system. We can aggregate reporting. We do all the audits on our clients' behalf. So that's time savings every month, not having to audit a medical carrier bill. And then we actually pay the carrier on our client's behalf too. So really having everything in a portal. I don't recommend this, but our clients' employees can download our mobile app and go through benefit enrollment while they're sitting on their couch.
And that makes life easy. It makes it better for everybody, right?
It's the ease of use and really having all the information, the full plan designs at your fingertips. And if you have a question, then you call the business partner, which we'll get into. Don't go at it alone. Use a trusted advisor, or you just pick up the phone and call Extensis too, and have real people there to help you. So you're not going through different carrier websites, and everything is all on your company's portal, the same portal you use to view your pay stub or request PTO. You're going to make your benefit elections.
Right. I mean, that sounds super, super simple. Now, let's continue on the benefits conversation, right? With respect to retirement plans, 401ks. New Jersey has legislation for, a required retirement program for employers over 50 employees, which includes a lot of low wage earners, even like the hospitality space. So talk about, being able to use Extensis or a PEO with respect to retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to leveraging a PEO for your large group benefits, typically most PEOs, Extensis certainly has what we call a multiple employer plan or a pooled employer plan. So essentially, you're leveraging all the PEOs economies of scale also for your 401k. So whether it's Transamerica, Principal, that PEO is leveraging their pooled assets, which can be in the 8 or 9 figures depending on the PEO, to negotiate best in class fee schedule, right? The PEO is handling the 5,500 filings, taking that fiduciary liability off your plate. For groups where it's applicable, to your point, we're going to have conversations. Hey, did you see the new legislation that was passed in New Jersey, right? Let's talk about incorporating that into your employee manual. There's administrative burden that gets cut out too. But it's not necessary to join a PEO's 401k. You may be working with a financial advisor. You may be in a very specific, state plan, for example. The good PEOs will give you a little bit more flexibility. You can keep your 401k, and you can actually run that through payroll through the PEO as well, just to simplify it a little bit more. So there's a lot of different options. I'd say about half of our clients join our multiple employer 401k plan to really take advantage of the fee schedule and the ease of use and shifting the fiduciary liability also.
Right. So, trying to save money obviously is going to be everybody's first priority. Nobody says, charge me more money. Second priority is saving money and make it easier. Right. With respect to setting up these types of things and making it easier, offering better technology is certainly a huge part of it. Plus the compliance piece, which probably gets buried, Yeah. So my challenge now is I oftentimes, I want to control workers' compensation. I'm a big fan of carving out comp and managing that through our office and maintaining the experience modifications, workplace safety, and helping out on that end, being able to help with audits, because oftentimes audits get, mixed up a little bit with respect to workers' comp. My biggest pet peeve when it comes to working with a PEO is I'll get clients say, oh, we moved to a PEO, we can cancel our employment practices liability insurance. And I put my head down like I'm doing right now. And then I shake it a little bit. And I say, you have to read the contract because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And this is a very blanket, vanilla statement that the benefit of some insurance, such as employment practices liability, is significantly limited when it comes to most PEOs compared to a robust policy that people buy. EPLI is one of the most important coverages for me and for most of my clients to make sure that they're protected appropriately with respect to third-party ADA issues, vendor issues, harassment, wrongful termination, anything that goes into, or could be covered by an EPLI policy, even ADA breach of compliance on websites. We've seen those lawsuits. We've had 2 of those through our office about people saying the websites were not ADA compliant, and a lot of those wind up getting dismissed, but it still costs a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
There's retroactive dates with EPLI policies, and then some PEOs say, if you don't let us know right away, we're not going to help you at all, and we're not going to cover it. If you didn't give us first notice within 48 hours of when you knew there was an issue, not just getting a lawsuit, and then they have $75,000 deductibles to go with it. So there's a lot of gaps. So just with anything, it's read the contract and understand what you're getting yourself into, because the sell sheet, right? The one pager is always pretty. It's the small print that gets us into trouble
Mhm.
all the time, So, you heard my shtick, you heard my spiel on the EPLI. You can certainly respond with respect to that, and provide some words of caution when it comes to
Yep.
signing up with any PEO, right? Make it, general words of caution on what people need to do as business owners.
It's funny, Aaron. I ran our retention team, I ran our onboarding team, and now I'm on a sales working with trusted business advisors. And really, the one thing that I'd say makes the PEO relationship work is trust and going into it eyes wide open. When I meet with groups that may not be working with an advisor like yourself who are versed on EPLI, most groups don't know what it is.
Hmm.
Most groups don't know if they have them. Most groups don't know what's covered. And a lot of PEO sales reps will not tell groups most PEO clients use the word retroactive aren't eligible for any retroactive EPLI coverage. It's a claims made policy on the inception of the PEO client relationship moving forward. So what I'll always tell my reps if I'm not working with, what I'll always tell my groups if there's not an Aaron Levine involved, I'll say keep your EPLI, use ours as secondary, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to run into any retroactive issue or tail insurance as we call it, right? So for a group, it's asking the right questions, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So that's when I'll say, go with an advisor. Not only read the agreement, but ask for copies maybe of the insurance lines before you sign. For example, ask for a copy of the PLI policy while you're in that vetting process, right? Go
Mhm.
over it with an Aaron, go over it with the trusted business advisor. Read the termination clauses. How much notice do you have to give that PEO to terminate the relationship? What does that look like? Of course, things with EPLI, deductible limits, and how much notice you have to give them. PEO is a lot of moving parts, right? I mean, you have HR, you have workers' comp, you have benefits, you have technology, you have payroll, multi-state payroll. Don't go at it alone. Use an advisor who's been through this before, ask the right questions, and read the agreement. Read the agreement, go into it eyes wide open. I don't like surprises. So let's eliminate them. Ask the right questions. If you don't know what questions to ask, go with a business advisor.
So it's great that you say that, right? Because you're a fan of working with advisors and making sure that there's a broker, an agent, a representative on the client side working
Yes.
with you to get the applications done. Because it's not a here I have 10 employees, give me a quote style process. It's all the pertinent information about the business, the type of business, the NAIC, what business are we operating, number of employees, where they're located, payroll, and everything else in between. So with all those moving parts and all the opportunities to increase and enhance the benefits package, plus the administrative, plus the HR,
Mhm.
um, there's too many things. It's not I'm going to give you a quote in 3 days or 90 seconds flat that we're going to put a quick app into the system. So it's certainly a process. So go into a little bit about that process and how to take the anxiety out of the process of trying to work with a PEO through your advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I would say is, and this might sound a little unique coming from me, don't look at one PEO. Aaron, I think I've told you this. Most PEOs do about 80% of the same thing, right? At the
Mhm.
end of the day, it all revolves around co-employment. The differences really are the pricing, the transparency, leadership team. Are they publicly traded? Do they have private equity money behind them? Do they more lead with technology, which isn't a bad thing necessarily? It all depends what the group is looking for. So leverage your business advisor to identify what your business needs are. That's great. Everybody wants to save money. Um, but what if there's different PEOs that can save you money, right? At the end of the day, you want to solve the right problem, right? So
Sure.
use the business advisor, identify the business needs, meet with the sales reps, ask the right questions, ask them about the implementation process. Always ask for references. Ask to see a demonstration, not just a
Mhm.
demo on the technology. Ask to meet some folks on the service team. Us sales folks can say how great our company is till we're blue in the face. But what I found is sometimes it helps meeting with who your implementation manager is going to be if we decide to partner together, right? Have them, the PEO, show you a clear roadmap of what the implementation process looks like and what success means to them. There are, again, a lot of moving parts, so we want to make sure we get the implementation right. So ask the tough questions and ask them, put them on the spot, put the PEO on the spot. What's implementation going to look like? Who do I call if I'm dissatisfied, right? um, dig into it, dig into the process.
Defining the success and learning about the implementation process, I think is huge, right? Get that out of the way up front, create those expectations before even
Yes.
reading the agreements, right? And signing on the dotted line to get the understanding of the timeline to implement, plus the work that's involved in implementing, because this is something that should be a decision that is a multi-year decision, not a
Yes.
single year flip, try and burn, because then you're going to fail, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
going to fail no matter what if we flip it, try it, and don't put the appropriate effort into it to set it up as a multi-year style contract. Even though it's an annualized contract, it
Mm-hmm.
still needs to be looked at in a multi-year term to make sure that everything gets implemented appropriately. So vetting the implementation process, and I love how you say define success. I think defining success for you, for the business owner, for the implementation team are all probably a little bit different. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy with the end of the process. So figuring out what that looks like and how to get there to make sure ultimately, obviously, the client that's paying the bill and administering the benefits and making sure that their team members, the employees, are pleased with the process, I think is huge. And Extensis may not be the right answer for every business owner. So
Mm-hmm.
interviewing multiple PEOs and having those same conversations is going to be great. Some are going to want much higher technology and tech forward. Some are going to want a little more handholding and may pay a little bit more for it, depending on what we're going to be doing, both inside and outside of the office. So asking those questions, I think, is tremendous. What did I miss, Dan?
Well, I want to go back to asking the questions about implementation. At the end of the day, a PEO's job, Aaron, is to make the end user and their employees comfortable doing business with the PEO. How we get there is different, right? And each PEO has a different path to get there. I would say, again, continue to leverage your trusted business advisor. Um, and you can tell also when you're being sold hard. For
Sure.
example, I'll meet with groups, and we're not the fit for a good number of clients, right? It could be for different reasons, but at the end of the day, my goal is really to make my trusted partner look good. So in this case, it would be an Aaron Levine. And I can meet with a group sometimes and we're not the best fit, but I just want to, the old Boy Scout rule, leave them a little better than they found them and maybe point them in the right direction. Hey, maybe an Extensis isn't a good fit, but I can give you the name of a couple of PEOs, or maybe PEO's not a good fit, and here's an idea that I have. So
Right.
it's the process is very educational if you've never been through PEO before. So make sure you're partnering with people that you're going to be better with meeting, no matter where you end up going at the end of the day, right? So transparency, pricing. A lot of PEOs do get bad raps out there about pricing and where they make their money. So it shouldn't be hard. You should be able to explain pricing to a high schooler. You shouldn't need a PhD to break out a PEO and do this stuff.
I'm not going to comment on that because I do think you need a PhD to fully understand it. But that's a conversation to be had when there's some data in front of us and a client for sure. Dan, I appreciate the education on the PEO world. I think there's some tremendous benefits for the right employers, for the right businesses. I love the multi-state opportunities. When you look at it, as things get more complex, we need to bring in more people to support it and support it right, and then be able to rely on them and be able to fall back when there's an issue if something arises, because something always comes up.
Always.
At the end of the day, we need to have the right people that are going to solve the issues when they arise, because they will. They never don't. It doesn't matter who you're working with. There's something may happen, and having the right people that can help you recover is going to be the most important thing in the world. So, Dan, I want to thank you again for joining me. Thank you to Extensis for allowing you to take the time and share about PEO and obviously what Extensis has to offer. And we'll look forward to bringing some clients to the table soon.
Aaron, thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you.